Welcome back. You are listening to the Maryam Mkwanda Show on Salam Media on this third day of September 2020. We live in a world where stress is almost unavoidable because technology creates the expectation that we make ourselves available to others 24 hours a day. Balancing our commitments and coping with stress in healthy ways can seem impossible. Joining me on the line right now is a Grant Battison, who is a yoga teacher as well as a meditation practitioner, and he has been doing this for years. And hopefully, he's going to teach us how to deal with our stress, because now we're living in this world with the pandemic around, and it's just a stressful situation. Hi, Grant.
Hi, Maryam. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. All right. So, first of all, how does one know if they are under too much stress?
Well, basically, it's kind of like you mentioned in your very nice intro. It really is an epidemic these days. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious throughout the day, that is definitely a sign of stress. So the human nervous system was designed to deal with stress in short bursts, and then in an emergency sort of situation. But what we find these days is that there is lingering stress throughout the day, sometimes a lower grade stress, but it's constantly there. So this constantly places the nervous system under a lot of strain, and it's prevents you from thinking clearly, and it's the whole system kind of breaks down because once we're in stress, we go into fight or flight mode. And then once we're in fight or flight, that down regulates your digestion, your immune system. You cannot think clearly because your cortex, the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center of the brain, kind of goes offline, and you go into the more primitive parts of the brain kick in to deal with what is perceived to be a life-threatening emergency. So the system itself doesn't know if it's life-threatening or not. It just knows that there's stress, and it goes into overdrive. So what we, this is as I say, an epidemic, and there are so many, there are natural procedures to do this, to alleviate this, such as meditation, specifically transcendental meditation. Also doing things like yoga, the yoga asanas. All these things help to alleviate the stress and throw it off, because stress is actually foreign to the nervous system. So the body is trying to throw it off, and what we find, the most effective way and the most natural way of dealing with stress is rest. If you'd like me to carry on, I will, or if you'd like to ask something else, but otherwise I can carry on. So rest is the most effective way of dealing with stress. And so what we find is during a natural, normal day, we'll be active, and the body and the nervous system will gather stress and fatigue naturally throughout the day. It could be whatever, anything, traffic, clients, children, whatever the normal stresses of the day and the work and so on, and we pick up fatigue and stress. And then at night, when we sleep, we slow down, and then we go to sleep. And in the rest that we gain in sleep, that rest throws off the normal, natural stresses that have accumulated throughout the day. The rest we gain in sleep throws that off, and we wake up feeling fresher and more revitalized the next morning. The problem is, though, this is where the issue comes in, is that sleep is really only sufficient to throw off the normal, natural, light stresses accumulated and fatigue accumulated throughout the day. But when we pick up deeper stresses, if we really are overloading the nervous system and things are really stressed, and there are situations that have really overloaded our nervous system, then we find that sleep is not sufficient to throw off all the stress. So over a lifetime, these stresses start to accumulate in the nervous system, these unresolved stresses that sleep was not sufficient to throw off. So the answer is, a lot of people are looking for more natural ways now. So so many people do not want to be on the chemicals and so on. So we find that meditation and the practices of yoga and so on are hugely effective in then throwing off these deeper stresses that have accumulated through the rest gained. So meditation, specifically transcendental meditation, allows the system to gain deep rest, deeper than that of deep sleep even. And then that goes about throwing off the stresses and normalizing the nervous system, and which leads to much greater happiness and so on.
All right, so take us through those stress relievers such as meditation that we can do, and how long does it take for us to meditate and to just relieve ourselves from the stresses
Right.
of life that's taking place?
Sure. Okay, so I specifically teach what they call for short TM, which is transcendental meditation, and that is practiced 20 minutes twice daily. It's practiced just sitting comfortably in a chair for 20 minutes twice daily, eyes closed, and this, when you get into the routine of doing this every single day, the results are absolutely amazing, and it's scientifically verified as well. There's so many scientific studies have been done. So it's a simple technique using the natural tendency of the mind. So it's simple. Anybody can do it. Anybody who can think can meditate, really. So it's not difficult. You know, there are a lot of misconceptions around meditation, that it's difficult and it requires a lot of concentration and so on. This technique uses the natural tendency of the mind. I'll give you an example of that. So if you're driving in your car and you're listening to a song on the radio, but it's your least favorite song, a song you really don't like, and then you stop at a traffic light and another car pulls up next to you and your favorite song is playing on the other car's radio, your mind just naturally goes to that other song. So you don't need to force the mind to go there. Just naturally, by its own nature, the mind is seeking, always looking for greater fulfillment, greater happiness, greater peace, greater bliss, and so on. It's always seeking that, but it's always directed outwards. So that natural tendency, just like the natural tendency of the mind, is to go to the greater happiness, the greater fulfillment of the song that you prefer. We just use that same tendency and we just turn the mind within. And it's a technique that you learn to do in a very natural way, because there's no greater happiness than that which already exists deep within every human being. So it's just a question, we keep hearing, and it becomes almost cliche, that happiness lies within, peace lies within. But the thing is, and it's always, of course, perfectly true, that happiness and peace does lie deep within. But what nobody is teaching people is how do you find this within? How do you get there? So it's one thing to say happiness lies within, but people don't know how to get there. And by learning meditation techniques and so on, specifically this TM, it's a method of turning the mind naturally within, and then using that same natural tendency, like it went from your least favorite song to the most favorite song. Of course, there is no greater happiness than that which is within. And if you just turn the mind in that direction, it'll naturally go there by itself. And these are the techniques that we teach to do that. And then the results are absolutely stunning, because the rest gained through meditation, this physiological rest, this is what happens. It keeps coming back to rest. So like I said, the natural way that the body throws off stress and fatigue is through rest. If you're ill and you go to the doctor says, get some rest and recuperation. He doesn't say go and work harder. He says go home and rest, and he books you off. So it's the rest that is so rejuvenating. And specifically the rest gained in this meditation is what does the trick. It's what throws the stress off, because it's the rest gained in transcendental meditation is deeper than that of the rest gained in even deep sleep. So all those stresses, like I said, that have started to accumulate in the nervous system due to sleep not being deep enough, the rest gained in sleep not being deep enough, these accumulated stresses in the nervous system start to then get dissolved by the deeper rest gained through the meditation. So there's really nothing even mysterious about it. It's just a technique to turn within. Our senses are always outwards, outwards, outwards. And when we turn them in and go within, it's a way to actually find that peace and happiness that everyone keeps talking about. That peace and happiness are deep within. But this is the way to get there. It's a technique. And it is compatible with all religions, all people all over the world are doing it. And it's compatible with any sort of belief system. It doesn't conflict with anything at all. And this is the beauty of it. And this is why so many millions of people are doing it.
All right. So now, when we try to meditate, sometimes a person would tell you to close your eyes and think about a happy place. And, that seems easy enough to do. But then those inner voices that keep on distracting you, how do you block that?
Right. So this is the thing with this particular meditation is it's so simple. So it requires we do not concentrate. You see there's a logical sort of fallacy in there and logical inconsistency in so many of these other techniques. Is that people are trying to apply mental activity in order to reduce mental activity. Can you see the logical inconsistency? So by trying to concentrate and trying to apply mental activity in order to reduce mental activity, I'm sure you can see the inconsistencies. That's why it's so difficult. So in this method, we don't use concentration at all. So some of those methods you said, like you said, think about a pleasant thing. There are lots of different kinds of meditation and different techniques. So you were describing their contemplation techniques. So with contemplation, you think of something or you could anything that you can busy the mind with. It could be a guided meditation where people are saying, imagine you walking through a pleasant forest and there's a nice stream and there are butterflies and so on. This keeps the mind sort of floating on the surface. And it may be relaxing, and people do get benefit from that. Certainly people do. And then you get concentration techniques where people will try to concentrate maybe on a candle flame or on a certain thing, and they'll try to push aside thought and so on. So you're thinking of you're looking at a flame or something, a candle flame, or you're concentrating on a certain thing, and then you realize your mind has drifted away, then you bring it back. That also keeps the mind on the surface. But using this natural tendency of the mind to go into greater happiness, greater fulfillment, greater joy and bliss, this is what this technique does. So this is a different kind of category. So we've looked at concentration and contemplation. This is what they call automatic self-transcending. So the mind will just go in, guided by its own nature in this technique. And then it reaches very deep levels, right down to the source of thought, from where thoughts are coming from. And this, as the mind settles down, then the physiology then follows. So the mind and the body, as we all know, are intimately linked. And when you settle the mind down, the mind gains this deep rest, then the physiology follows, and the heart rate drops and the blood pressure drops and all the stress hormones get switched off and the feel-good hormones get switched on, and the body gains this deep rest, allowing it to throw the stress off. So in this technique, it's very easy. We're using the natural tendency of the mind, and we don't have to try and fight the mind and try and control the mind and try and force the mind and force thoughts out and so on. So thoughts will be there, and which is a natural part of it, and we just don't mind. And those are the thoughts that are there are actually part of the release of the stress process as well. So whatever happens, we just don't mind. But there are. This is just a broad sort of overview. Obviously, when we teach the actual technique, that's done one-to-one with a teacher, with a transcendental meditation teacher. But as I say, so that just goes quite naturally of its own accord, just using the natural tendency of the mind without trying to force anything, without trying to concentrate. Does that help?
Yes, it does, because I know that my mind always wanders. I'll be sitting in the room and like, everyone close your eyes and imagine. And I'm like, okay, I'm closing
Yes.
my eyes, but I cannot imagine all of this because my mind is always wandering. It's all over the place. So I definitely need to learn
Yes.
TM. Speaking about TM, how long does it take for one to master the technique?
Okay, so this is a very good question. So the learning process, it's a 7-step process, starting with firstly an introductory lecture, and then what they call a preparatory lecture. It's done on the same night, and then a little personal interview, just so we can get to know you better. And then there's a personal instruction. It's done one-on-one, the student and the teacher, and that's tradition. It's traditional. It's been taught that way for hundreds, thousands of years, and it's a personal instruction just with yourself and the teacher. And that takes about an hour and a half on the first day. And then there are 3 follow-up days where for about an hour and a half on each of those days, you would then reconnect with your teacher, and we would do the checking of the technique and making sure and clearing up any questions and tweaking it and so on. So it's a 7-step process. The actual, once you get to the learning of it, it's a 4-day thing. So it's about an hour and a half of each day. But once you're doing that, what we see is, what the research shows is that within a few short weeks, within 3-4 weeks, if we look at brainwave patterns and so on, and we look at the actual EEG coherence and very orderly brain function, you'll see that in about 4 weeks, a new meditator will look exactly the same on the EEG scope as someone who's been meditating for about 30 or 40 years already. So just within a very short time. The difference, however, is that the long-term meditator, for people who've been doing it for years, that EEG coherence and this orderly brain functioning you see continues even outside of meditation, even when they're not meditating. That has become stabilized and set, even when they're going about their business throughout the day. But while we're meditating, within about 4 weeks, the new meditator his brainwave patterns look exactly like a long-term meditator. So within a very short space of time, the results come. Normally, it's different from person to person, but most people within a few days are reaping the benefits, and it changes lives in only beneficial ways. It's so beautiful.
Mhm. All right. Now, earlier on, you mentioned that you take about 20 minutes to just sit down and meditate and breathe. So, when should we take out these 20 minutes of our time? Should there be a specific time? Some people say meditate in the morning when the birds are chirping, and some will say, meditate later in the evening, or do we take the time off from our busy schedule, our busy day, and just put everything on hold and start with the meditation?
Yes, so a very good question. So we find generally, so we try to do it at least twice a day for about 20 minutes. And in the mornings, generally before breakfast, is the best time. So take that time for yourself. Make it your own special time. Make an appointment with yourself to do that. So first thing in the morning is generally the best one, because you've had a night's sleep. The system is settled and rested, and the sleep that you've gained has thrown off a lot of the stress of the day, and we wake up fresher. So before the phone starts ringing and before other people and so on start to make demands on your time, take that time for yourself, even if it means getting up maybe 20 minutes earlier than you normally would. There's also quite a practical reason for that as well. So we do it before breakfast because we find that when we meditate, our system settles down, and all our physiology sort of slows down as it gains its deep rest, and everything rests. So your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops, and so on. If you've just eaten something like a big breakfast, then the system is trying to speed up your metabolism to digest this big breakfast or whatever it is. And can you see that there's a sort of a bit of this meditation is trying to slow things down, but the meal in your stomach is demanding that your system speeds up to digest it. So it's a very good way to do it before breakfast. And then when we eat breakfast afterwards, it's very grounding then when we have breakfast after we've meditated. It's nice to a way to ground yourself after meditating. Then in the evenings, generally the best time we recommend is at the end of the sort of business day. So if you can do it sort of 4:35, 6 o'clock, that'll be great. We realize that it's not always possible. Sometimes people are sitting in traffic at that time, or whatever it is. But generally, at the end of the working day is a good time, before dinner. If because of modern fast lifestyles, you need to do it after dinner, then try and give it at least an hour or so, an hour or two after dinner before meditating then. Just so that your meal is digested and then everything can settle. So first thing in the morning, and then late in the afternoon, early evening, generally best. But if that doesn't work practically, then any time is good. It's better to meditate than not, even if it's not at the ideal time.
All right, so true. And what are the benefits of meditation in general?
Right. Okay. So what we find is some of the things we see. It's very good for the brain. So we see what we call EEG coherence, which is very orderly brain functioning. So when we get this orderly brain functioning through meditation, it allows for higher thinking, greater creativity, greater intelligence, even studies have shown. So more creative thinking, higher moral reasoning even, because it brings the cortex back online again, the prefrontal cortex, which is our executive center, as what makes us human, is to have this very big cortex, and it's the executive center and the center for moral reasoning and so on. So the system gains deep rest, the immune system comes back online again, the clear and orderly thinking, good decision making comes online. So we start to naturally make good decisions. We start to naturally have a warmer air around us. So all our relationships improve. We see this all the time, both professional, personal relationships, all relationships improve as the stress gets thrown off. We become easier to be around because it's the stress that makes people irritable and so on. And when you get rid of that, and the system gains this constant rest every day, we become much nicer people without trying to be. It's just in a very natural way. And then we see improvements in memory, improvements in academic performance. We see people greater achievements of their goals and so on, because you start to function at a higher level when the executive center, the cortex, is functioning nicely, and you're not in fight or flight all the time, in emergency emotions all the time. Then your full potential as a human is far more accessible when you're functioning at full potential. So it's naturally, without any effort and without trying to be more effective, you just are more effective in the world. And that's in all your areas of life, family, professional. As I said, your health improves because the immune system is back online again. And it's very good for brain health. Orderly, clear brain, coherent brain function.
Definitely something that we all need to do. For our listeners and viewers who are watching and listening, how can they contact you should they wish to know more about TM?
Yeah, sure. So they can contact, if you Google Transcendental Meditation South Africa, that'll come up, but also tminjoburg.co.za is a site you can look at. I can give you my telephone number as well. Should I give that on the line? Live to you?
Yes, you may.
Okay, my telephone number is 084 548 3755. And also there's the main center is in Houghton in Johannesburg, and their telephone number is 011 483 0684. That should probably be your first port of call, is phoning. You can speak to Vicky or Richard Broom, or you can phone me on that cell number that I gave you, 084 548 3755. Or you can go to that website, TM in Joburg,
All
.co.za.
right. Thank you so much for your time, Grant, and for the lovely chat. It was very interesting and informative.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Maryam.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye. That was Grant Battison, who is a yoga teacher as well as a transcendental meditation practitioner. And they are based in Houghton, Johannesburg. If you would like to learn more about transcendental meditation and how you can meditate, like really get in touch with your inner being, then contact the Houghton Center on 011-483-0684. That's 011-483-0684. And you can learn how to really get connected. And it's not just about mentally, it's that it becomes like a spiritual thing. And you can really increase your relationship with God, because you're really now getting in touch with your inner being, your soul, your spirit, and you are transcending. This is definitely worth a try, especially if you're a person like me whose mind is always wandering. Like, you just get 5 minutes off. Like, guys, give me just 5 minutes, and my mind is already all over the place. Like, in my mind, I've already been to all 7 continents, just by the way. Give me 5 minutes, and yeah, I'm gone. So, definitely something worth a try for me, and for those of you who are also interested in it. You can leave your comments, questions, queries, or suggestions in the comment section below. And don't forget to follow us on our social media pages. And for more information, you can also send to us on WhatsApp. The number is 0617660355. Do stay with us. We will be right back after the break.